Picture this. You wake up, stretch, and start your morning like any other. Maybe you grab a coffee. Maybe you check your phone. But then, there's a knock at the door. You open it, and standing there are police officers. Their faces are serious. Their words hit you like a punch to the gut. Your spouse has been murdered. Shock, grief, confusion. A flood of emotions rushes in. But now, imagine something even worse. The person who planned the whole thing, the one who wanted you dead, wasn't some masked intruder, wasn't a stranger in the night. It was the person you loved the most. This is the story of Dalia Dippolito, the woman who thought she orchestrated the perfect crime, until the entire world watched her get caught. And trust me, this one, you won't believe how it ends. Dalia and Michael Dippolito looked like the perfect couple. Young, attractive, and living a life that many would envy. To outsiders, they had it all. A beautiful home, a whirlwind romance, and a love story that seemed almost too good to be true. And in many ways, it was. Michael wasn't just any man. He had a past, one filled with mistakes, bad decisions, and a few run-ins with the law. Years ago, he had been caught up in fraud, serving time for running a telemarketing scam. But he had turned things around, or at least, he thought he had. He paid his dues, straightened out his life, and was finally on a path that felt right. A fresh start, a clean slate. And then he met Dalia. She was striking, dark hair, piercing eyes, a woman who knew how to command attention without saying a word. Their connection was immediate, intense. It didn't take long for things to escalate. Within months, they were married, swept up in a passion that burned fast and bright. Michael was convinced he had found his second chance, not just at love, but at life itself. He showered her with gifts, with affection, with promises of a future that would be better than anything either of them had ever known. She was his everything. The one who stood by his side, who accepted him for who he was, who made him believe that his past didn't define him. But love, real love, is built on trust. And trust, well, that's something that can be given freely, but once it's broken, it's nearly impossible to put back together. Michael saw Dalia as his fresh start, but for Dalia, marriage wasn't about love, it was about control. And while Michael was lost in the dream of their life together, she was already working on something else. Something that didn't involve growing old with him. They say love makes you blind. And Michael, he never saw it coming. Dalia Dippolito had a plan that required patience, precision, and the right person to help carry it out. And in her mind, there was only one man she could trust. His name was Mohammed Shihada. He wasn't just anyone. He was someone she had been close to before Michael ever came into the picture. An old flame, a confidant, someone who had seen sides of her that others never had. She reached out to him, spoke in hushed tones, and laid everything on the table. There were no hesitations, no second-guessing. She wanted Michael gone. It wasn't a question. It was a request. And not just any request. One that came with an urgency that made it clear she had already made up her mind. She needed someone who could get the job done, someone who wouldn't ask too many questions. A professional. A hitman. Mohammed listened. He let her speak, let her believe that he was on her side, that he was the man who would help her cross that final line. But as the words left her lips, as she explained in chilling detail what she wanted to happen, something shifted. Dalia thought she was speaking to a friend, an ally. She thought she was securing her future, removing an obstacle, tying up a loose end. But what she didn't realize was that Mohammed wasn't just sitting there, nodding along, considering her request. He was thinking about something else entirely. He walked away from that conversation, but he didn't go looking for a hitman. Instead, he went straight to the police. And that was the moment everything changed. Dalia had no idea that the walls were already closing in. No idea that every step she took from that moment forward was being watched, recorded, planned for. She thought she was controlling the situation, that she was the one pulling the strings. But in reality, the trap was already being set, and she was walking straight into it. When the police heard what Dalia Dippolito was planning, they didn't hesitate. This wasn't just talk. This wasn't a passing thought, an angry outburst, or an empty threat. This was a woman who had looked a man in the eye and calmly, deliberately, asked him to find someone who would murder her husband. They couldn't afford to ignore it. They had one chance to catch her before it was too late. So, they did what law enforcement does best. They set a trap. An undercover officer was chosen for the role, a man who would pose as the hitman she was so desperately looking for. The plan was simple: make contact, gain her trust, and get everything on tape. There could be no room for doubt, no ambiguity. They needed her words, clear and undeniable. And Dalia? She didn't disappoint. The moment she sat down across from the man she believed would take her husband's life, she was in control. No hesitation, no nervous laughter, no second thoughts. She spoke with the confidence of someone finalizing a business transaction, as if she were negotiating the price of a new car or deciding on the details of a home renovation. Money wasn't an issue. Timing wasn't an issue. Nothing was an issue, except for one thing. She needed this done. The officer pressed her, giving her a way out, a moment to reconsider. Did she really want to go through with this? Was she absolutely sure? Her response would go down as one of the most chilling statements ever captured on tape. "I'm 5,000% sure." Not a pause. Not a flicker of doubt. She might as well have been ordering takeout. That was it. That was all the police needed. But an agreement wasn't enough. A conversation wasn't enough. They needed something big. The morning of August 5, 2009, started like any other for Dalia Dippolito. She left her house, drove to the gym, and went about her routine without a care in the world. To her, everything was in motion. The deal was done, the plan was set, and by the time she finished her workout, she would be a widow. But what she didn't know was that the Palm Beach police had spent the night preparing something just for her. They weren't waiting to catch her in the act of planning a crime anymore. That part was already done. Now, they were waiting to see how she would react when she thought her wish had come true. Officers swarmed the Dippolito home, securing the area, blocking off the street. They positioned patrol cars, set up crime scene tape, and even called in a forensics team to make it look as convincing as possible. The front door was left slightly ajar, the house filled with the kind of silence that only comes when something terrible has happened. It had to be perfect. It had to feel real. And then, they waited. When Dalia pulled into the neighborhood, she was stopped before she could reach the house. A police officer approached her car, his expression grave. He asked her to step out, to come with him. She followed, confused. And that's when she saw it. The yellow tape. The flashing lights. The officers moving with purpose, speaking in hushed voices. Something had happened. Something bad. She was led toward the house, where a detective delivered the news with a steady, measured voice. There had been an incident. A break-in. An attack. Her husband, Michael Dippolito, was dead. What happened next was captured on camera. Her hands flew to her face. Her breathing grew rapid. She gasped, sobbed, doubled over as if the weight of the words had physically hit her. It was a reaction that looked, to anyone watching, like raw devastation. A wife who had just lost her husband. A woman whose world had just come crashing down. But was it? Because the officers watching her already knew the truth. There was no break-in, no attack, no body lying inside that house. Michael Dippolito was very much alive, sitting safely in a room at the police station. And the woman standing in front of them, wailing in grief, wasn't a widow. She was a suspect. And soon, she was about to learn the truth. They walked her to a patrol car, telling her they needed to ask a few questions. She nodded through tears, still playing the role. But the moment she stepped inside the station, everything changed. A detective sat across from her, calm but firm. And then, he said the words that shattered the illusion. "We know everything. Your husband is alive. And we've been watching you this entire time." Silence. Her body stiffened. Her eyes flickered with something unreadable. She had been caught. There was no way out. But this was just the beginning. Because what happened next, inside the courtroom, was something no one saw coming. Dalia Dippolito sat in that interrogation room, listening as the officers laid out every piece of evidence against her. The undercover video, the staged crime scene, the fake hitman she had so confidently hired. It was all there, irrefutable. A case so solid it should have been open and shut. But Dalia wasn't ready to accept defeat. When the case finally went to trial in 2011, her defense team came armed with a story that was as unexpected as it was bizarre. According to them, Dalia wasn't a criminal at all. She was a victim, trapped in an elaborate scheme orchestrated not by the police, but by her own husband. Their argument? The entire thing had been staged, not as a murder plot, but as a misguided attempt at fame. They claimed that Dalia and Michael had been trying to land a reality TV show. That everything, from the recorded conversations to the crime scene itself, was part of a performance meant to attract producers and put them in the spotlight. It was a wild claim, and one that prosecutors tore apart with ease. There was no evidence of any reality show deal. No contracts, no interest from television networks, nothing to suggest that this had ever been about entertainment. But there was plenty of evidence to show that Dalia wanted Michael dead. It didn't take long for the jury to decide. In 2011, she was found guilty and sentenced to 20 years in prison. But that wasn't the end. A few years later, in a shocking turn, an appeals court overturned the conviction, citing issues with jury selection. Dalia was back on the streets, awaiting a new trial. And when that trial began in 2016, it seemed like the case would be wrapped up just as quickly. But this time, the jury couldn't reach a unanimous decision. The result? A mistrial. Dalia had slipped through the cracks again. By 2017, prosecutors were done playing games. They took her to trial one last time, determined to make sure she didn't walk free. This time, the jury didn't hesitate. She was convicted again, and this time, she was sentenced to 16 years behind bars. It should have been the final chapter. But even now, long after her final conviction, there are still people who believe Dalia's story. People who insist that she was set up, that she was never serious about the murder plot, and that somehow she was the victim of a system that wanted to make an example out of her. Even now, from inside her prison cell, Dalia continues to claim she's innocent. But is she? Or was this always exactly what it seemed? Dalia Dippolito isn't finished fighting. Even now, locked away in a Florida prison, she still refuses to accept her fate. After her conviction in 2017, her attorneys wasted no time trying to overturn the verdict. They argued that her trial had been unfair, that the media attention had tainted the jury, and that the police had acted improperly in their sting operation. Appeals were filed, legal battles dragged on, but time and time again, the courts rejected her requests. Her conviction stood. For now, her fate is sealed. Dalia is serving her 16-year sentence at the Lowell Correctional Institution, a place she never imagined she'd end up. Unless something changes, her earliest possible release date is 2032. And Michael, the man she once promised to love and cherish? He has spent years trying to put the ordeal behind him. For a while, his life was consumed by the case. The constant media coverage, the courtroom battles, the endless retelling of how his wife had tried to have him killed. But eventually, he did what Dalia never could. He moved on. He remarried, built a new life, and left the chaos behind. Still, no matter how much time passes, one question lingers. Did Dalia ever truly love Michael? Or was he always just a stepping stone in a much larger plan? So, what do you think? Was Dalia Dippolito a cold-blooded mastermind who thought she could orchestrate the perfect crime? A skilled manipulator who got caught in her own web of lies? Or was she something else entirely? Perhaps a woman caught up in a dangerous game she thought she could control? Cases like this make us question everything we think we know about human nature. Love, trust, betrayal. How does someone go from promising forever to plotting and execution? Was it greed? Was it desperation? Or was it something even deeper? An obsession with control, a hunger for power disguised as love? The Dalia Dippolito case is a reminder that sometimes the truth is stranger than fiction. It's the kind of story that keeps us up at night, makes us look over our shoulders, and wonder just how well we truly know the people closest to us. And maybe that's why we're so drawn to true crime. Because every case is more than just a crime. It's a glimpse into the darker corners of the human mind. It's a puzzle, a cautionary tale, and sometimes a story that leaves us with more questions than answers. But now, I want to hear from you. What's your take on this case? Do you think Dalia acted alone? Do you believe her defense that this was all just a reality show stunt? Or was she simply someone who thought she could outsmart the system and lost? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into crime and deception, don't forget to subscribe to Vic's True Crime Stories. Because as we've seen time and time again, there's always more to the story than meets the eye.